Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm here with the Midwest Writing Center, and today I am excited to introduce you to someone super cool. So I will be pressing more buttons. So I'm excited today to introduce you to Madeline Young. They're a naturalist at Nahant Marsh Education Center and a recent graduate from Augsten College. Madeline is a MWC Young Emerging Writers alum and is passionate about increasing access to the arts and natural spaces through her work. I am super pumped to, first of all, if I didn't know you and just read that bio, I would be super excited to meet you. But I'm super excited to introduce you to the folks who watch this video series. And for the folks watching this video series, if this is your first time, you may not know what to expect. So what's going to happen is I'm going to interview Maddie, and then we're going to give a quick rundown of what's up at the Midwest Writing Center. And then we'll have a free rate, which has today been prepared by Maddie. And I'm going to call you Madeline. I'll be a professional. And I'm super excited for it. It's a really good prompt. So thank you for being here, Maddie.
Yes, thank you for having me, Sarah.
I guess let's start with the little pieces. I met you because of your involvement with the Writing Center.
Yes.
And so because of that, I did not know that you were involved with the sciences. Can you tell me how that first piqued your interest, even if it was like when you were 6 or 2?
Yeah, so I always kind of knew that I wanted to work in some kind of like anthropology type field. I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was very small, but as I got older, I started to get kind of involved with this idea of environmental justice, especially through my undergraduate degree in anthropology with Augustana. I got very interested in Native peoples and the work and impact that they have on the environment and the ecosystems they take care of. And it just kind of came to pass that I had all of these little interests, right, that kind of compounded. And I would say in general, I am more on that social side of sustainability. I think about the human more than about the hard sciences type part of it. But I do have, with this new job, I think I have been developing a bit more of a rigorous belief in the hard sciences. I come from this background where everything is subjective, and I think that objectivity is something that's very interesting, especially in hard sciences, because I think everything comes through a human lens, right? And that's just like the little anthropologist in me that says humans are a filter, right, for all of this grand information. And I think about science personally through that lens. Like I like to look at people who do science. I don't want to do the science myself. But yes, I think that for me, the arts and the sciences really commingle in a very interesting way. Through nature writing, there's this very strong history with Aldo Leopold that, lots of people, especially aspiring naturalists, develop a relationship with. And I kind of came to it through a few different books, and they're mostly ethnographies. But there's a couple that I just like fell in love with immediately, and a couple of theories. So the first book being Wisdom Sits in Places by Heath Basso. So that's
Who was that by?
Heath Basso, Basso. And it's an ethnography about place names with the Southern Apache. And it is written so beautifully. And I would say in terms of creative nonfiction, it sits deep in my heart because it's so rich in poetics that it's just not just like a scientific read, but a fun read. But it really, like, the author, this ethnographer, this anthropologist, developed this very strong, intimate relationship with the people that he was studying. And so I think for me, anthropology sits at that cusp between hard sciences and humanities or art, right? And that's kind of where I am in that mishmash of both. So I love nature writing. I think it has come to be something that I do in my own life. I took a class in college my sophomore year titled Political Ecology of the Land. And so for that class, yeah, I know, It was very fun. That was taught by a professor called Meg Dubray, who is no longer at Augustana, unfortunately. She's an incredible anthropologist and environmental scientist. But I was forced to do this field journaling workshop, or this field journaling exercise every day during the month of January, which very cold. But at the same time, it was very enjoyable to get outside and develop a habit in terms of developing that relationship with nature that I think is so very not necessarily important to our society. It's something that we have constructed, you know, like nature is a place that we go to, not a place that we are a part of. And one book that really taught me that was The Social Creation of Nature by Neil Everington. So that's Everenden. There we go. I know how to spell, Sarah. But yes, I think that that is where I solely rest, is that environmental anthropology side of things.
You said something so beautiful. You said humans are the filter for information, and that is just like period accurate, but it's so pretty the way you said it.
Oh,
Real quick, and you know, if you're not ready to define it, I can look it up on a search engine, but can you tell us what an ethnography is?
yeah, so it's a genre of creative nonfiction. It's the format of essentially research for anthropologists.
There we go.
So it's basically, I would describe it, and my anthropology mentor would describe it, Adam Call, as intense hanging out. And then the documentation of that intense hanging out. So it's a long form book. It's not like a short article. Anthropologists are wordy by nature, and we love to write things about the people we study and are a part of their cultures and communities. So
Thank you. I thought I had muted myself. I apologize. I made noise there for a second. But yeah, I'm putting the we have a comment. I'm putting the anything we reference, I will be putting in the chat. If it's a website, if it's a book title, it'll be in our chat here on here on Facebook, and then it'll be in the video description on YouTube. This is my cat Pool.
Hi, kitty.
He has chosen a spot. Thank you for that. I like to give some definition and clarification with anything really. And I prefer it to be human, you know, I prefer it to be what comes to mind when I say the word, or what comes to mind when the person saying the word says it. That seems more useful to me than trying to find a proper definition.
Yes, and I can be a bit jargonistic, so I apologize on that front.
No, I mean, that's something I enjoy. I think it's also very useful. I have read, I learned the word ethnography from a book about animal symbolism.
Oh, okay.
Really cool. I don't want to, I'm going to say the wrong title, so I'm just not going to say the title. But it was about animals and their symbolism to a specific ethnic group, a very specific ethnic group, and relating to like the animal in real life and its behavior. And I was like, this is the coolest like subsection of study.
Yeah.
And since then I've read a couple. Yeah, so I'm excited to see really someone talking about it in general.
Yes. Well, and I think that ethnography as a style of writing is so like undervalued, because it can be very beautiful and it can be very hard sciences kind of approach. There's one that always springs to mind when I talk about that. And it is Native American DNA by Kim Tallbear. And it's got all of these statistics and all of this wonderful information, but it's quite dense, I think. And it's not an ethnography in the typical sense. And nature ethnography in particular has become a really interesting subfield. And I did my senior inquiry project, which is basically Augustana's capstone project, kind of on this similar theme of how humans interact with their environment and the ways that we can apply intimate relationships or form intimate relationships in order to better assess like how climate change is affecting our communities around the world. And I was very interested in a few different subtopics that have become very popular recently. Like these books have become quite trendy, I would say. I think that they're very, very good books. They're well done. One of them is How Forests Think by Eduardo Kohn. The last name is spelled Kohn.
Can you repeat the title? I'm so sorry.
How Forests Think. And then I will wait for Sarah to, you're good? Wonderful. And then there's also one that is very near and dear to my heart, and I think it is so beautiful. And it's a bit of an unusual ethnography, but I think it's one of the nicer ones I've read. And it's about the matsutake mushroom trade in America and Japan. It's very cross-cultural global studies, and it's called The Mushroom at the End of the World. And it's by Anna Lowenstein. So that one is also highly recommended for me in terms of ethnography. And I think that ethnography as a genre really does bridge that gap between science and art, because it is that creative nonfiction, right? Where there is all of that information that needs to be told through the writing. But I think that there is some level of like poetics that should be inherent to that writing, and that's how I approach it. Some anthropologists might go either way. I lean more towards the humanities side of things, where I'm like, yeah, poetry should be in anthropology. It's a part of the human experience, right? But that's also comes from my background in creative writing. So, and there is a wonderful journal if anybody has access to it. And I'm just throwing so many things for everybody to read and look at. But I'm very passionate about this topic and I know a lot about it. So, but that journal is called Anthropology and Humanism. So that one's a very cool one to look at if you're looking for anthropology, like poetry type situations. And there's some really cool pieces to read in there or art to look at. So that's one I would definitely check out.
That's really cool. Thank you for that. I had forgotten and now am remembering a handful of literary journals that do accept that like specific theme, right?
Yeah.
On this intersection.
Yes. Yeah. There are many of them. I just, I don't remember too many. I would have to speak to a couple of old colleagues, about that and see if what I can dig out. And I could probably find some of that for you after the session.
And we can add it. So it'd be great.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about, I tend to sort of sum up the arts. This is going to sound just really broken up. I'm not the most eloquent person in the world. I tend to think of the arts as just the expression and exploration of, the human experience. And you have used this idea that the human experience is the vehicle through which we experience the physical and everything else world around us, which I think is really, really cool and really useful. And so seeing your idea as yourself as like an anthropologist of naturalism. Does that sound like I'm saying the right words?
Yeah, those are the right words.
It's not my usual genre of words.
Okay. They're new to me too, some of them.
So so that bridge is really easy for me to understand, getting from anthropology to nature, or from the arts to anthropology. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who don't see the connection between the arts and anthropology, but it seems really clear to me that we are humans exploring being human, and that's just like the end of the sentence.
Yes. Yeah.
But what where is that bridge for you? Is it just like, this is how you live in the world, this is how you exist in your body, and your body has these intersections? Or actually, I'm trying to work with, and this is going to sound so pedantic and maybe a little woo-woo, I'm trying to work with the idea that there are not intersections so much as overlappings, right? We don't exist on a grid,
Yes.
because there's only one point of contact on a grid, right? It's not an intersection, it is an overlap. So you exist in this world, and this is just, the way you see things? Or was there something that brought you into environmentalism or naturalism specifically? I know that was like the world's longest preamble into a question.
That's okay. I'm just processing. I do see it as a very much so like a Venn diagram of sorts, right? I didn't necessarily think that naturalism or being a naturalist was the path that I was going to take. But I got very lucky. Nahant had a position available, and I saw it as an opportunity to give back to the community that had given to me, for my entire life. I'm from the Quad Cities, and I wanted the opportunity to give to students in underserved communities, give them environmental education, give them writing education, all these things that, they might not be able to access otherwise. And my cat has decided to join us too. This is Twinkie.
Hey, Twinkie.
Yes. But we, oh, no, don't do that. You've distracted me with your biting. But, and now I've forgotten. So to me, art and nature come together at this intersection, which is like that filter through my body. And I think that I've always had a bit more of a creative mind in terms of things. Like I've always applied art to whatever I was doing. So whether it be poetry or pottery, like those are the two art forms that I majorly dabble in. I have used poetry in all of my anthropology work, and now too in naturalism, exploring the works of writers like Aldo, Leopold, Muir, all these people that are very much so forefathers of the modern environmentalism movement, has become an interesting topic for me. And nature writing in particular exists kind of in that Venn diagram crossover episode, whatever, that brings together all the things that I have done in my life into this perfect little bubble, right? And it fits very nicely in the folds of my mind, I would say. And to me, naturalism is not just about the hard sciences, like being able to recognize a bird on a tree, or seeing, breaking down these systems in which animals or creatures or any living organism exists on our planet, right? It's about interpretation through culture, through the way that humans have experienced the land that we're on. And a lot of that for me is in relation to Native American studies. That's kind of also my background in anthropology, and how Native peoples have existed on this land for millennia before colonizers ever stepped foot on it, right? And that relationship is very important to me when it comes to interpretation, because I am not of this land, right? My ancestors are from thousands of miles away on another continent. And so giving, the space and the microphone to someone whose ancestors were born on this land, who understand it, who have developed these intimate relationships with the ecosystems that they have been a part of for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right, is so very important to me. And I think that environmentalism and conservation in particular don't necessarily give that space to Indigenous people as much as we should. And yeah, that's where I come from. I think that Indigenous people should be at the forefront of every work that we do, because this is their land. And, we are on Native land. It is just a fact of life.
It's important too to note, I think, in regard to Native people existing on this land and conservation idealism. Conservation wasn't necessary until it was colonized, until the land was changed and the resources were abused. So there is 100%.
Really like that spot, doesn't he?
He does, but he's really fat. He's almost 20 pounds. So the whole chair knocks back when he does that.
Oh, no. You're like engaging your ab muscles right now, right?
Yeah.
Making yourself sit up. Oh.
So there's knowledge and information for all of human history that exists and has been ignored or has been erased about how to care for this land in such a way that both all land animal and people animal, so land comma animal comma human animal
Human animal.
Can coexist.
Yes. And I think about, there is this article by this guy named Timothy Morton about this kind of new subfield in ecology called queer ecology. And when you said like human animal, I thought of this phrase that he coined that's called strange strangers, which is anything that is not human, right? So how we relate to strange strangers. It's very interesting because we don't necessarily think of us as being animals, even though we're just big monkeys, with the ability to comprehend language. But what you were saying about conservation and the fact that colonization is the reason for it all, that's completely right. I think that there are so many things that led to Native peoples not being able to maintain the land that they are a part of. And, even today where we're seeing some bigger upswells in Native peoples, the sport of Native peoples when it comes to conservation and environmentalism, it's never going to be as good as it needs to be. And there is so much that Native peoples do, like they defend about 90 to 95% of preserved nature, which on the planet globally, which is a huge number, right? If you think about the fact that only like 5 to 10% of preserved nature, it comes from other groups of people, like that's insane, right? And it makes sense because if you've lived on a land for thousands of years, then you understand it better, like you understand how it works. And conservation is not just about the ecosystems that we're a part of, right? It's about how humans relate to them and how we live on these spaces and places, right? So, and that to me is where nature writing comes in, is that through outdoor field journaling, through developing these relationships. Oh, yes. So it is, I apologize, I'm on my phone. It is queer ecology, is kind of that subsection that's very new and a bit controversial, but I think it's quite cool. And the article itself is quite hard to read, but it is a good read.
Once you get hard to read, like it's heady jargon, or is it emotionally difficult?
It's heady jargon, I would say. But I forgot what I was saying.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. That's why I put it in the chat.
That's okay. But yes, Native peoples are very important to conservation efforts and to nature writing. Oh, there we go. That's where I was going with that. But developing those relationships comes through having a repeated ritual of nature, of time in nature, right? And I think a lot of the times we think of nature as someplace we have to go to and not something that we are a part of. And that is a distinction that I think that everyone should make when they're thinking about the spaces that they are a part of. But anywhere outside is going to be nature, right? You are a part of nature inherently by your existence on this planet. And
I love that you said that. I think about that a lot. Keep going.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so even if you just go sit in your backyard for a moment and write what you see, right? So when you see something, you write it down. When you feel something, you write it down. When you are reminded of something by something in nature, you write it down, right? And these are the connections that we form in our lives that allows us to have these intimate relationships with nature, that give us the opportunity to form these deeper relationships, not just with our planet, but with the people around us, with our families, with our friends. I think that a lot of it does come down from like that mindfulness side of things, that practice. But for me, I kind of just think of it as time to myself, to write and to develop a habit that feels meaningful. And I think, especially in January, it's a good time of year to think about developing these habits. Because
that's not what I thought you were going to say. And I was really excited. So I'm going to interrupt anyway. You said that, when you did your field journaling, that it was in January, which is like not ideal.
No.
And that's where I thought you were going to go with that. And I was
No.
excited to say, this is the time of year. I mean, yes, reflection and new beginnings in the new year. But seasonally, this is the time of year that we really forget, here in the industrialized world, we really forget that we are part of the earth. Because we spend so much time inside. We have so much climate control. Just, because it makes it easier to survive. But this land does still exist as long as it's safe to go outside or to engage with outside, whatever that means. Maybe it's specifically not safe for you outside, but you do have a window. There's a lovely, lovely writer, L.A. Felleman. She comes to our writer studio group on Saturdays, but she's been publishing a lot. And she has a series that's just outside her window. Now she, I think, has like a wooded area. She lives in an apartment, but she has like a wooded area outside her window. And that absolutely counts. And these poems are just gorgeous that she's writing. But yeah, I think we really ignore outside when it's uncomfortable for us. And I think that probably there's a lot to be said for not doing that, for engaging a little bit. Also, this is an aside, but a really exciting one. I was reading yesterday that literally touching dirt. Okay. So I'm not like telling you to go touch grass as like a rude way of telling you to leave your house. But literally physically engaging with dirt releases serotonin. And it's something, I took a screenshot, or not a screenshot. I was reading an actual physical book. I took a picture of it because it broke down like the chemicals and the reasons. And it was so cool.
Yeah. I think that's probably why I like pottery so much. It's refined dirt, but it's still dirt. Like, but there's something so satisfying about just like putting your hands into the mud, right? And connecting physically with nature. I think you can develop like that heady kind of cerebral practice of writing about nature, either indoors or outdoors. And that's something about nature writing too, is like outside of the window is totally an opportunity. Or even bringing nature inside, right? So bird feathers, don't take them if they're illegal. Pine cones, anything that you
Did you say picking up bird feathers are illegal?
Some are, yes.
Like protected species or like?
Yes.
Cardinals.
I'm not sure. You'd have to ask someone who knows.
So research that before you pick up bird feathers. Also, maybe wear gloves, wash your hands.
Yeah. But in all actuality, right, back to the general topic, there are ways of bringing these things indoors. And that is, I think, one of the things that I have done in my life. Like, I had an ex-boyfriend who his apartment had like this like back foyer area that opened up to like this like kind of forested spot. And his neighbor had put out tons of different like bird feeders and stuff. And it was just so lovely to watch all of the birds throughout the day. And I would just spend hours there watching them. And like I saw the first pileated woodpecker I've ever seen in my life there. And it was a very special, exciting moment.
I got really excited because my neighbor has a bird feeder, and I moved recently and I was hanging out with him because I wanted to meet him. I know I sound very folksy. And like people talk to their neighbors. No, not really. Haven't met the one on the other side. But he like, I said, I described a bird because I'd never seen it before. And he was like, there's 2 or 4 of them there right now. There's not one. And he was right. And I was like, he was looking at me. I was looking outside. And it's just, bird feeders are so cool. And I had no idea.
I know at Nahant, like my desk is here, right? And then there's like a window over there, and the window points directly at our bird feeders. And so this time of year, we'll see a lot of like cardinals, downy woodpeckers, red-bellied woodpeckers, starlings, sparrows, chickadees and the like. And it's just fun to watch them. They're cute little beings. I think they're quite stupid. But it's fun to it's fun to observe how other like animal species behave. And I take that in comparison to humans personally, because I think it's unusual. But yeah, I do like birds, but not enough to spend all my time studying them.
Yeah, no, that was an aside. I apologize. So, there was a point you made, I made a note of, and also I think this will be helpful to wrap it up with the Nahant Marsh mission. The mission is, it has the word mission in the mission. That pleased me. The mission of Nahant Marsh Education Center is to protect, enhance, and restore the marsh through education, research, and conservation. Now, you also mentioned, and I'll read the vision too. The vision is to foster wonder, appreciation, and stewardship of the natural world. Beautiful and important, both of those things. But you also mentioned engaging with underserved populations, which are either, generally speaking, are either highly urban or very, very rural. So on 2 different spectrums of engaging with nature, right? Either surrounded by it, not necessarily engaging, but surrounded by either garden or wood, really, if we're not garden, agriculture or wood, if we're generalizing, or fully removed from it, accepting, say, public parks or parking strips, medians. And you said part of your work specifically was to engage with those, to get those populations educated and engaged with your work, which obviously is maybe not obviously, which is a sweet spot for me. I started out in education and social work, working specifically with underserved populations. And of course, at the Writing Center, we will offer scholarships for hardship pretty universally. I hope I said financial hardship, and not just hardship. So education is just period number 1 out there. So I was just really happy to hear you say that, and I wanted to emphasize it a little bit. Please don't walk on my keyboard. And
Yeah.
then with that in mind, I'm sorry, you can talk. I'm gonna deal with the cat for a minute.
Okay. That was like just more of my personal, I think, mission more than Nahant's. But I particularly work with after school programs in Rock Island, the Rock Island Milan School District. So a lot of those communities and a lot of those kids live mostly in that urban area. And so they don't really have access otherwise to environmental education services. And so I think it is a wonderful opportunity to provide to those groups. And yeah, that's how I feel about it. I personally felt very privileged where I grew up in a space where I had backyard access to what we think of as nature, quote unquote, right? I grew up on a farm with lots of trees and prairie and that sort of thing. Oh, excuse me again. But most people don't have that, right? And I think my respect for and my love for the environment comes from that uprising. But how can I give that to a student who doesn't have that same upbringing, right? And I think part of that is through outreach. A big part of that is like having them be in contact with nature in some way, shape, or form, whether it be indoors or outdoors. Because nature, as we said, is all around us. And although we make this distinction of indoors and outdoors, I think that environmental education can be done in both very well. Um, Obviously, a lot of the times we would prefer to have people at Nahant, exploring our trails, the ecosystems that we have there, because we have quite a lot. Hello, little buddy. Um, but I think that it's possible to be able to um, provide those services in other places. Oh, so
Uh,
sweet.
he's been doing I don't know if people, yeah, you can tell I'm holding a cat. He's been doing a long con. I have some wet food hidden near me that is not his. And
Oh,
he's been trying to like cuddle me into submission, I guess. So yeah, I was entirely correct about that. So saying a few more times. We've both clearly stated that one, our orgs are interested in education and stewarding that which we educate about. Yeah. And we've also both stated, I think pretty overtly, that we believe that part of the human experience is nature and part of the human experience is art. And so this is a totally organic segue, right? So I assume that, your work in the sciences at the Marsh informs your work as an artist, whether that be as a ceramicist or as a writer or whatever other art forms you engage with. I know that, I mean, this is going to sound really silly and it has a lot probably more to do with my stress level than anything, but I know that I create more when I go outside more. And maybe I don't have time to go outside and that's why, I have a higher stress level or whatever, because I don't get to choose what I'm doing with my time, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm assuming that about you. Is that true? That your work informs your work?
it does. Yeah. And I was just talking maybe a month and a half or so ago when Skylar Alexander was in town about how busyness breeds like creativity and the creation of art. And I think my mental busyness gives me so much more to write about. And especially since, I have so much access to nature, it's pretty cushy working at a nature center, being able to go for a walk, if we're not busy. And a lot of the times, I like to handwrite, but sometimes it's just easier to grab your phone, notes app, write it all down on there. Um, and just get those thoughts and feelings and observations out. My work does inform my work in that way. And when we observe what is going on, either through what is very apparently going on externally to ourselves or internally to our bodies, like how do the seasons or the weather impact how we feel, right? Not just mentally, which obviously like cloudy weather like today, I can see a spot of sunshine peeking through the clouds, might affect our mood just a little bit more, but how our bodies react to different changes too. Like I have migraine. And so like when things change very quickly with the outside environment, it's reflected in how my body is experiencing the world.
Yeah, I have arthritis and I don't feel great right now.
Yes.
It's just in one part of my body, thankfully. But yeah, that's really cool note that like our bodies know whether or not we're fully aware.
Yes. And I think it comes up more so. Like I identify as a disabled person. I have multiple chronic illnesses that impact how I live my day-to-day life. Right. But at the same time, I look at nature and nature looks back at me and it says, today's going to be harder for you, Maddie. And I think that I feel it, as much as it sucks, right? I think that that experience makes me feel slightly more in tune to these oscillations of our planet and of the environments that we're a part of. And that doesn't mean that people who are able-bodied can't experience that, right? It's just, for me, it's a negative experience, right? It's just, it is pain or it is fatigue, those sorts of feelings. But I'm so much more aware of it because of my disabilities. And it makes it easier to develop a relationship with nature, but it also makes it harder to live this human life in the way that I want to all of the time.
That's, first of all, beautifully said, like very like eloquent and succinct. But yeah, I was kind of ruminating on it. I want to write it down. But to get to the meat and potatoes first, for the folks who are hanging out with us, I want to let you know we started a little late, so we're going to go a little late. This will be up on Facebook forever, but it'll also be on YouTube right when it's done. But you said, I'm trying to see that what you said as a silver lining, that my body is going to tell me what's happening outside of my body. I'm gonna try and keep that with me. It's not necessarily fun, right? But it is something to consider. So we're to just get to it. We're really together right now. I mean, I would have loved to do this anyway. I think that you are really, really cool. You're good at talking, you're a great artist, and you're a smart person. But we're here because we are, thanks to you, collaborating, our two orgs, the Midwest Writing Center and Nahant Marsh Education Center, to put on a series of nature writing classes, which are going to have, there will be 4, is that right? 3.
Yes.
Does yours not count?
Mine does count. There's only 3.
There's only 3.
So they're
Sorry.
Our first one starts next month in February. Sarah will be teaching a generative
yeah, I can talk about that if you like.
Yeah, please do. But it's on February 11th, so please feel free to start that, Sarah.
Yeah, so I'm super pumped about this. This is like my favorite opportunity right now. So I'm going to be combining the the idea of nature writing, field writing, being there, taking in concrete and small observations is really my focus. The little things that we don't necessarily have the time, attention, or ability to take in. And then working it into a couple of my favorite forms, form meaning structure, which can be taken in whatever writing genre you're into, but I like to play with letter writing and list writing because those are, I think, neglected and also like really easy to be creative with while still having a lot of structure. So the idea will be that we leave the class with a draft, with a finished or semi-finished draft of a new piece of work, because this will be generative. And if you don't want to work within the formal guidelines, that's cool. That's up to you. I'm never going to tell you how to do what you do. But I find personally that playing with structure can be more generative and sort of work those writing muscles a little more. Then your class is in March. Can you talk about that?
So I will be teaching a generative writing, nature writing workshop for children aged kindergarten through 6th grade. So that's the typical age range that I work with at Nahant. So it's open to any young child or young adult interested in creative writing or nature writing. So we'll be kind of focusing on multiple different genres, field journaling, poetry, that sort of thing, and a little bit more about that general creative writing side of things. So I'm very excited to teach that one. A bit nervous because I haven't taught writing to kids this age, but it will be a wonderful opportunity for kids who want to be outside, who want to do art, who want to do all of these things. And because I was one of those kids who would get stuck in a creek pretty frequently, and I think that I'm hoping there are still kids like that today. But yes. And then in April, we will be having another guest instructor, Aubrey Ryan, who will be teaching the poetry side of things for our third workshop, and this will be an adult centered. Yes, Sarah's.
I just grabbed, yeah, they can't see me while you're talking. I just grabbed Aubrey's book published by MWC Press called Choir. So if you want to browse her work, see what you're going to be getting familiar with, of course, you can buy it, but it's also at the library. And I'm sure if you look into it, you can find some of her work online. I don't know for sure where her work has been published other than the chapbooks that I have, but they are at all the local libraries. There's some at the Book Rack in Davenport, some at the Artsy Bookworm in Rock Island. So if you want to, see what Aubrey's about, she'll be teaching the April class on poetry.
Yep, so that'll be on April 16th. And then in the evening of that day, we will also be having a poetry reading. For the instructors of the class will have a little bit longer sets, but then people who are attendees will be able to read as well anything that they've written through the course of that workshop. So, and it's kind of all in celebration of National Poetry Writing Month and
which is April.
Writing. Yes, which is April. So it'll be a very fun few months for us between Nahant and the Writing Center. And I'm really looking forward to, collaborating in the future as well. So hopefully this all goes well.
Yeah, and that's, honestly, you don't need a writing center to write. You don't need a marsh to engage with nature. Whatever you have available to you, you should use as much as you can or want to. I'm really excited. I say this all the time. I probably sound really, really cheesy because I was a member of the Writing Center for over a decade before I started working here. And so it means a lot to me. I engaged a lot with the Writing Center because it was so good for me. And I always find that going to a class or a workshop or an event that is arts related, but particularly literary, because that's, my form, always makes me much more productive over the next couple of months following it, not just in that class specifically. So I'm always pro workshop for that reason. We have this very pervasive cultural myth that the writer must be a recluse, must be alone and solitary and create that way, but that's not true. It might be true for some people, but it's not true for anyone I know or anyone I know of. I feel like the idea in our heads is of like Hemingway smoking and drinking over a typewriter. We know factually he spent a lot of time hanging out with his friends at bars and coffee shops. Don't know why I went that way. I also want to say, I believe, correct me please, Madeline, if I'm wrong, that these are $15 to $20 depending on membership status. That cheaper end is if you're a member, and you can be a member of either the Writing Center or the Marsh to get that discount.
Yes, that is correct. And that is true for all three workshops. So $15 to $20 for each workshop, depending on membership status. We're currently still working out times. We do have the dates, but all that information will be up on our Facebook events for either organization in the next few days or a week or so. So be on the lookout for that.
And then
but I did also want to say, I feel like I personally write best when I am in community. I think that writing by myself does not go well. And I agree with you. I went to a workshop with Skylar a couple of months ago, and I was just like, I am reinvigorated. It's time to write.
It's also, there's something, something that I end up saying a lot is like, when you're stressed, you're not creating because you've got this block to work through, whatever it is. And maybe that's not true for everyone. I know a lot of people feel inspired when they're going through some stuff. And also, like, any kind of feeling can be a catalyst for creation. Totally. But there's something really, really useful in knowing that you're not the only person in the room, and knowing that you're among folks who care about what you're doing and they're willing to help you with it is super, super useful. If you wanted to reply to that, please do.
Yeah, I think that all of what you have said is true. I think that community is important in every aspect of our lives, whether it be our creative process or social process or the relationships we form with nature. I think that by our biology and by our nature and by our personality, as humans, our tendency
We're
is to
community
social.
animals.
Yes, we're community animals. And I have one more book for all of you. It's called The Creative Spark by Augsten Fuentes. So it's about how humanity came to be, and it's because of creativity and not all the bad things like war and disease and all the bad stuff. It's a really good book, and I highly recommend it. It is another like kind of anthropology themed book, but it is much more like kind of popular culture anthropology, so it's not going to be as jargonistic or on the deep end of things. It's a good gateway into exploring how humans have always engaged with creativity and the arts, and I think that it's a wonderful read, and it's pretty quick too.
So I neglected to ask about what happens at the Marsh. I know that you work in youth programming, but I want to know what else happens there.
We have so much going on at Nahant. So we have lots of events throughout the year. We have two big events throughout the year that kind of happen. So one of them is our monarch release party. So in the months leading up to September, we rear and then care for like lots of different monarch butterflies before we release them. Because the monarch butterfly is an endangered species, it's an important thing to, get them back out into the environment. We have lots of natural resources type stuff going on, internships, things like that happen. Only part of the marsh is actually open to the public. So a lot of it is reserved for research purposes, either through a program that is called LSAMP, which I don't know too much about personally. But there's also like other research that is done by our employees, and we work with Eastern Iowa community colleges. So Nahant Marsh is kind of the site of their conservation program. So that's the site of where a lot of conservation program students end up learning a lot. There's so many things that we do in our community. And as part of like our education team, I do a lot of outreach to schools, but also to older adults. Like we have a Breakfast Nature Club series, which is geared towards, adult age peoples. And each month there's a different topic, and there's just food, and it's kind of a nice time for people to come by and say hello and learn about some of the stuff we're doing at the Marsh. We do animal care, so we have several animal ambassadors that are in our care, and those are education animals, but they're also, you can come and meet the animals at any point. Nahant is open Monday through Saturday. Monday through Friday, we're open 8:30 to 4:30. And on Saturdays, this time of year, we're open 9 to noon. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do at Nahant, and we're trying to expand our programming, the things that we do all the time. And we'll have a spring celebration later on this coming season. And then like next month, we also have like Valentine's Day hike type situation for couples to come to. Lots of cute things going on. So I always recommend people check out the Nahant Marsh Facebook page, because all of our events are put up there by our lovely marketing and events coordinator, Colin. So yes, please check that out. We have lots of stuff that we do. So much more than I think I will ever know. And that what I've just said only scratches the surface, right? So yes.
What I am so sorry to do this, but what are the animals?
Oh, so we've got 8 turtles, something like that, and 3 snakes, and then 1 frog. So do you want all of them? you want a
No,
list?
no, I was just curious. It's okay.
Yeah, so we have mostly native species of like animals that live in like Iowa. We only have one species that is not native, and it is the three-toed box turtle. And those are because people release them into the wild because they're very popular pets. So the animals that we have are ones that cannot be released for either they were born and raised in captivity, or they have some sort of injury or illness that doesn't allow them to be released into the wild. So, and they're our little buddies. I like to take snake breaks throughout the day. So
I'm so
you will
sorry if you
often
can hear that.
it's okay. It's okay. No worries.
Okay, so now I'm gonna not sneak into, I'm gonna go into the chat. You've got some questions specifically to you.
Wonderful.
One is, can your work be found online, your pottery, your writing? Do you have
Um,
a website?
I do not have a website. That's something very smart that I should set up. I do have an Instagram that has some of that stuff on there, and I should do a better job of sharing that. That is, yep, it's MADLOUYOU. So the first three letters of each of my names. I, at this point in my life, don't work very hard to publish that much, but I do write a lot. And you can find some of my older work, like when I was a teenager, in the old atlases. So the
I
books
linked
that
to number 11 because I wasn't sure which issues you were in, but I knew you were in that one.
I think I'm up to 12. I think I'm 10 to 12. Those are the years for me. I think
Yeah. And do you perform, or do you have any performances coming up? I guess you've got that one in April.
for readings, no. I do go to like a few different open mics every once in a while. Like you can sometimes see me at what is it called? Roaring Rhetoric, or I think the one that Aubrey Barnes puts on. So every once in a while I'll show up to one of those, but it's quite a rare occasion these days. I'm quite busy if it doesn't seem like that already. But yeah, you will see me at all of these workshops. So I am definitely going to pay to be a part of all of them. So that would be a wonderful space to get to talk to me more. And you're more than welcome to come to the Marsh and have a conversation with me at any point. You know, I basically work full time. So.
Then we've got, thank you. And I do want to say you're an excellent performer. Yeah, you're a really good performer. Like, you're a good writer, but you're a really good performer, which, I mean, there's two parts to that, right? There's the words, and then there's the putting the words out there with your voice and your body.
I give that all to Skylar Alexander. I was not a good performer until Skylar Alexander, and then Skylar Alexander came. I've said her name 3 times now. But she is so incredible and also an incredible performer. So I highly recommend checking out her stuff too if you don't know who that is already.
Just gonna go ahead and
assume
link to
all of
Skylar's
you
book.
Yeah. Keep linking.
Skylar is a former young emerging writer intern and former staff member at the Midwest Writing Center. Previously I would say that she had my job, but my job has changed a lot because I've had it for
She
5 years.
also just went viral in India
I
for
saw that.
getting married. Yeah. That was quite funny to see.
So let's see. Skylar is a teacher, a writer, performer, and friend of the Writing Center. So she taught lots and lots and lots of our interns at the Young Emerging Writers program. And she was an intern in that program, and she did do our graphic and book design for a long time. And now she has a book, so I've linked that too.
And it's a wonderful book. I finally have just read it this past week, and it is incredible.
It's really good. I can also say, if you want to see Maddie perform, because I have a big brain, we had Maddie perform with the Midwest Writing Center at the
it's the Young Emerging Writers.
Thank you.
It was like a showcase.
Yeah, that's on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Midwest Writing Center. And then you also read with the conference which is also on our YouTube page.
Yes.
I'm sure there are others out there, but I filmed those, so I know they're there.
Yeah. I think that those are the two I've done this year. I usually do maybe 2 or 3 a year. So not too many, but keep an eye out. If you see my name, it means I'll be there.
Yeah, that's it's a good way to know. Okay, so now we'll get to, I'll do my what's up at the Midwest Writing Center, and then Maddie has a prompt for us. So I tend to talk really fast for this part, and I tend to get my dates a little bit jumbled, so I apologize in advance. Okay, at the end of the month, January 28th, we have a workshop titled Things About to Disappear, taught by Gwen Hart. It'll be over Zoom. And I don't know why I don't have the information in front of me. I'm looking at my calendar instead of the course description. But that is the poetry of pop culture. So Gwen Hart is the instructor who will walk us through how to effectively use pop culture reference in our writing. It'll be a generative workshop, and it'll look at poems from past and present that have used pop culture references, how they work, why they work, stuff like that. It'll be really, really good. I assume I will. I'm usually at every single workshop that we do, partially because it's my job, but partially because I can. But I'm actually not entirely sure if I'll be at that one. I have a conference that I'm going to on that day, unfortunately. But I think that it's going to be really good. Gwen Hart's work is really good. If you look her up, we've got links to her stuff on the Midwest Writing Center website. Then, of course, every first and third Saturday of the month from 11 to 1 Central Time, I host a writing group called Writers Studio. That's a workshop group where we try to help each other through our works in progress. We don't use the traditional workshop model. We like to make sure that we give you feedback based on your needs for the piece, so that I'm not telling you my taste and how to make your work into my work. So I'm telling you how to do what you're trying to do with your work. You are in charge of your work after all. Of course, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have at 1 p.m. Central, we have Write More Light. That's what you're watching right now. Last Thursday, I talked about the first line, which is a much discussed, much contested topic in writing, whether that's in prose or poetry, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is. And last week I talked about the warm-up, which you can go find on YouTube. But this Thursday, I'll be talking about the first sentence that is advertised as the hook. So there will be a third one on the same topic next Thursday. In February, we have a workshop with Ada Zalelian called Our Cultures Ourselves. This will be a primarily prose writing generative workshop, though, of course, like I always say, we're never going to stop you from writing in whatever form comes naturally to you. That is not our way. We want you to write what comes. This will be about taking your own personal cultural history and working it into your writing. Ada Zalelian is the author of a book called Legacy of Lost Things, in which she does just that. We actually have 3 workshops coming up with Ada Zalelian, one each month, on Thursday evenings on Zoom. One is about writing snapshots or vignettes, and one is about family writing, I believe. I am so sorry that I don't just have this up, because I could. Let's look at this. Yes, okay. Things About to Disappear, Poetry of Pop Culture with Gwen Hart, Our Culture Ourselves, Writing Through a Cultural Perspective with Ada Zalelian, How to Start a Story, Writing Snapshots into Stories, Prose Workshop led by Ada Zalelian, and Writing Family Stories with Ada Zalelian. Those are all going to be really good. Those are both really talented writers. I'm really excited about them. And then, of course, one of our big exciting things, the thing that people really get excited about, is Iron Pen. Iron Pen contest is a 24-hour contest, starts at 5 p.m. on Friday, ends at 5 p.m. on Saturday, in which we give you a prompt at 5 p.m. On our website, on our social medias, in your inbox if you're signed up, and you write whatever you can, the best you can for 24 hours in whatever genre you pick. It's $10 per entry. Poetry, fiction, or nonfiction are the categories that we have for you to choose from. And then every single entry is entered, not wins, is entered to win the opportunity to go to the Collins Writers Conference in the summer, totally for free, which has just some of the best faculty. It's one of the best and smallest conferences you can really find. I can't yet announce who will be there this year, but I'm really excited. I'm always so worried people are going to think I'm disingenuous, but the fact is I'm excited because I get to do this. I get to choose, so I choose well, and it's really exciting. Yeah, so Iron Pen's coming up. It's a really fun contest. I always get a lot from it. I don't participate properly anymore because I am staff, but I still participate because it's really good for flexing those writing muscles. That's the joke. It's like Iron Man, Iron Pen. That's what we've got. All information is on our website, mwcqc.org. Now, if you're checking out now, you don't want to do the prompt. Well, that's sad for me, but please, as always, write more light into your life. Now, after Maddie talks, I'm going to put a 5-minute timer on the clock. I'm going to write right along with you. Now I'm done talking.
Okay, lovely. Can we hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. So this prompt comes from an observation that I have about a specific animal behavior. So I urge you all to go look this up right now before you start your writing. And it's about this behavior called murmurations. Which is a behavior that European starlings do, where they fly all in one bunch. And it can be hundreds or even 1,000 birds that are all flying in the same movement. And every day after I get off work and I drive home on River Drive, maybe once a week or so, I will see a group of starlings flying around the top of the Figge Art Museum. And I was inspired by that. And so I wrote this prompt inspired by that behavior. So fully look that up before you start writing. I think that it will inspire you in many ways, especially the word murmuration, right? That's such an interesting word. But this prompt is titled Ruminations on Murmurations. So a little wordplay there. So what activities do you perform in nature that are repetitive, strange, enigmatic even? How do you explain away the unexplainable? When you lose your sense of beauty, how does it return? What do you do that is a murmur? So you can answer all of those questions or just one, or just use them as inspiration. But yes, let us write.
Awesome, thank you. I've put also the text of that prompt in the chat for folks who maybe didn't fully catch it, although there's a lot to it. So like Maddie said, do what feels right. I'm gonna put 5 minutes on the timer, and depending on my cat's behavior, I will mute or not mute myself. Hi, baby. 50 seconds left. It always makes me jump out of my skin when it goes off, so I like to announce in advance.
Jump me out of my skin by saying that.
Sorry. So it's been 5 minutes. I hope that yours was a little more productive than mine. Mine was interrupted by a feline. Yeah, thank you so much. That was I'm gonna keep writing for a few minutes before I have to get back to the hustle, as they say. This was tricky for me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Maddie. Do you have any last notes before we close out?
Not too much other than, continue to engage with your environments, even at this cold time of year. Even if it's just for a minute or two, we do need to be outside, regardless of what season it is. We need to get that vitamin D to help our bodies work properly. So yes, and treat yourself with kindness. I think in our current system of world, the way we live, it's not always conducive to being human. So, and writing is so very helpful to get all of those words and those thoughts out. So use that toolbox that you've already gained, and share your human life in the best ways you know. So, and make sure to keep an eye out for the emails and the information that will be coming your way about the writing workshop series that we're doing in collaboration. So it will be very fun, hopefully, and I hope that people will take a lot away from it, both this and from the series.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you, folks, for joining us. As always, please write more light into your life.